Well, good afternoon to you. It is 4:07 here on Newstalk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up today, Tom Fitton joins us at 5 o'clock from Judicial Watch. He was on the big stage last night, or at least a video of him was, asking some questions of these Republicans. And then at 5:30, Congressman Pat Fallon joins us. You can join us, as always, at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. A lot of big clips, actually. A lot of big moments last night in this debate. Vivek Ramaswamy had one. He had a lot. He said, if you're going to support any candidate, you should support somebody who tells the truth about what's going on in our country. Take a listen as he runs down this list and see if you agree with it. Here's Vivek.
He made. I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state that at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi Arabia's involvement in 9/11? That the Great Replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory, but a basic statement of the Democratic Party's platform. That the 2020 election was indeed stolen by big tech. That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment that actually put up the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that they knew was false. There's a reason why I'm the only person on the stage who can say these things. That's what it's going to take, not people who are licking his boots one time and now Monday morning quarterbacking him and criticizing him when it's convenient.
That's a good line. It's funny, the boot licking thing. He's accusing them. I don't know. Vivek seems like, the kind of guy who likes Trump, too. He probably could give us flavor notes on Trump's boots. But here's the reality. He did lay out in some great detail a bunch of things that you never hear on these debate stages about a lot of issues. A lot of issues. And it is driving the left absolutely crazy today. Everything he said. Everything he said. The fact that to go through some of this, he says, looks increasingly like January 6th was an inside job. He's got a lot to say about that. A lot of, even to this day, how many times have we seen Christopher Wray sit down for congressional testimony asked by some lawmaker, hey, how many federal agents were in the crowd? Can't answer that. Can't answer that. Can't answer that. Over and over. And it's not just Chris Wray. It's any number of FBI officials. And, of course, we've since found out that there were quite a few FBI agents and or informants in the crowd involved. Also, this video footage of all these cops just letting people into the building. What was the deal with that? Can you give us more answers on that? And, of course, no. The answers are not forthcoming because the government doesn't want to give us answers on any of this. The big tech company stealing the 2020 election, do you really need that explained to you? Do you really need any further information on that subject? Actively censoring the American people and the electorate? Mark Zuckerberg spending immense amount of money concentrated on Democrat districts to make sure that Joe Biden would prevail in the election through what we call Zuckerbucks? The gross manipulation of election laws all across the country in places like Georgia and Pennsylvania, in violation of state constitutions, in violation of the U.S. Constitution, changing the rules. Well, we've got COVID, you see. We can't follow the normal rules for an election. So-called ballot curing in Democrat districts. This is real stuff. None of this is even disputed. In Pennsylvania, you had Democrat districts changing the ballots, working with the voters. Hey, you made a mistake on the ballot, fixing it. That they weren't doing in Republican districts, contravening the state law. Saying that you didn't actually have to have your ballot postmarked on time when you were sending it in, changing the state law. These are not even disputed things. These are real things that actually happened during the election that no one disputes, to the extent they talk about them at all. The government not giving us the full extent of Saudi involvement in 9/11 for over 2 decades, he's right about that. When almost every hijacker was a Saudi. And this whole concept that the left has created and devised because they thought demographic change, this is the language that they use, demographic change is going to lead to long-term permanent Democrat victories. And what they were referring to is a theory they've had for a couple of decades now, which is as the country becomes less white, it more guarantees that Democrats will be elected. That's been their theory. Roy Teixeira, a Democrat, alongside a co-author, wrote a book about this, The Emerging Democrat Majority, in the early 2000s. Who was it that I hear Dan Bongino cite all the time? The Michelle Goldberg column on the subject. We can replace them was her column. This is not some right-wing concept. It's a very much left-wing concept. And the left got mad when the right noticed. And also, it's a stupid concept for the left because it hasn't necessarily borne out, actually, because, people's attitudes change over time. Your race doesn't fundamentally define how you think at all. The left was convinced that if the country became much more Hispanic, that it would be long-term Democrat voters. Not true. Not true. Democrats are a coin toss. Hispanics are a coin toss on who they support, Democrats or Republicans now, thanks in large part to Trump. Certainly thanks in large part to the easy comparison between the Trump and Biden economies. So it was a stupid theory on their part. It hasn't actually borne out, but it is the way they view the world. So Vivek laid all of this out last night and I think did a handsome job of actually explaining it. Now, it's funny because over on CNN, they were, as you might admit, furious about all of this. They were upset. You had Dana Bash last night attempt to challenge. Do I have this in my cut sheet, this particular audio? Yeah, I do. So we had Dana Bash. Here it is. Confronting Vivek after the debate last night. What do you mean conspiracy theory? There's no evidence that January 6th was an inside job. That's what she wants to focus on. Okay. All right, let's concentrate on this. So Vivek, who, I'm sorry to say for Dana, but Vivek's a lot smarter than her. It's not unusual. Vivek is a lot smarter than a lot of the people that are in the room with him. But here's the exchange. Listen to this.
Let's start with January 6th.
Sure.
There is no evidence that it is an inside job. It was a fringe
an inside job
conspiracy theory that the Trump-appointed FBI director, Christopher Wray, has said explicitly over and over is just not true.
So I appreciate the opportunity to address it. I was an anti-woke crusader leaving the business world, and if you had asked me 3 years ago, is there some chance January 6th is an inside job, I would have said that was crazy talk. I would say looking at the facts of the video footage that have come out, Dana, it is shocking that you still haven't gotten a clear answer of how many federal agents were in the field that day. Look at now the video footage of actually throwing explosives and rubber bullets.
Now, a real news organization, just to emphasize something here, a real news organization would actually ask these questions. How many federal agents were there? Right? They would be attempting to speak truth to power, trying to hold the government accountable. But instead, CNN and its various hosts and reporters have been perfectly fine carrying water for the government for all of this. So it's not an act of journalism. The First Amendment was not designed to protect the government. It was designed to protect the right of Americans to scrutinize the government. That's what the freedom of the press is for. It's not freedom of press releases. It's freedom of the press. And so he's confronting her about, hey, we've never gotten a straight answer on this, and the media are not asking about it.
I would have said that was crazy talk. I would say looking at the facts of the video footage that have come out, Dana, it is shocking that you still haven't gotten a clear answer of how many federal agents were in the field that day. Look at now the video footage of actually throwing explosives and rubber bullets into what was a peaceful crowd, then releasing to the public what came in response to that. But now look at the video footage that...
Let me pause on that, too. So we've got... What he's talking about is something Julie Kelly has been emphasizing in a big way, which is that what role did the police response play in terms of being an accelerant for otherwise peaceful protesters? And yes, it is possible to be a peaceful protester who walked into the Capitol building peacefully. Walked into the Capitol building. What role did law enforcement play in accelerating the chaos? That's a reasonable question. And it goes to the core of how do you resolve civil unrest? How do you resolve protests? How do you do it in order to have the least amount of injuries and casualties and impact possible? How do you keep something from becoming a riot, right? These are all fundamental questions you would deal with in crowd control and law enforcement. Is it not reasonable to ask, how much drama was created by the law enforcement response. Yeah, it's totally reasonable. So Vivek raises it, CNN doesn't.
That day. Look at now the video footage of actually throwing explosives and rubber bullets into what was a peaceful crowd, then releasing to the public what came in response to that. But now look at the video footage that was released, and I'm glad we're talking about it because viewers deserve to look at that footage. Capitol Police literally letting people in who were then now prosecuted. Some of them have gone on to commit suicide because of what the government's doing. That is a case of entrapment.
And undeniably true. There's video footage that tells us this, that demonstrates this. Any number of people who went into the building were welcomed in right this way. Nobody's in the way. There's video footage, right? We've seen video footage of some of these people walking around who were being escorted by Capitol Police. They were just following them around. They were walking together. What? Explain that. And in case you're wondering, where did all this mistrust in government come from? Well, how about the government has constantly violated the public trust on a routine basis? Vivek says, hey, whatever happened to the Michigan case with Gretchen Whitmer? Remember her? Remember the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer that we were told about? What happened with that? Who actually planned that thing?
And you don't think it was actually the former president who was trying to get
I think that was the media narrative. Now look at actually a hard case.
We heard him with our own ears.
I'm going to ask you about a case and see what you think about this, right?
And that's also a lie. What Dana Bash just said about it was Trump who called on the people to riot at the Capitol building. No, he didn't. He said, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. I'm quoting him directly. And so on CNN, they're so captured by this narrative construction that it's like, Trump incited the riot. Not even Jack Smith is making that case. And Jack Smith is making ridiculous cases against Trump. Nobody's even charging him with incitement. CNN is, but the Justice Department, as corrupted as it is, isn't even charging him with incitement. And yet Dana says it's Trump's fault, it's Trump's fault. And Vivek's like, no, let me walk you through this. I'll do it slowly so you can understand.
You guys said this for a long time about the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. Suddenly gone silent after it comes out at trial that absolutely that was a case of entrapment, which is why 2 of those people were acquitted. So I'm saying this as somebody who, on the other side of this, as a biotech CEO.
And it wasn't just entrapment. I mean, it was entrapment, yes, but the FBI planned the whole kidnapping. It was like they found one rube, and then the whole room was otherwise FBI agents. They're all sitting around plotting the kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer, and then they charged the rube with a crime. It wasn't quite that, but it was essentially that. It was essentially that. And it was used as a political cudgel. Oh my gosh, I can't believe these crazy Republicans trying to kidnap Democrat governors. Like, who would want to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer? It wouldn't even be worth the time. Like, really? You got to feed her and talk to her and listen to her. That'd be awful. What a stupid plot. Why would you do that? You'd have to be the FBI to think that was a good idea. To kidnap Gretchen. Really? Would you want to spend time with Gretchen Whitmer? Would you voluntarily dine with Gretchen Whitmer?
So I'm saying this as somebody who, on the other side of this, as a biotech CEO, somebody who was even anti-woke, but if I was looking at this, I would have said a lot of this is crazy talk. But if you actually get into the details, I think it is startling how much the government has systematically lied. And I think it's both parties over the course of the last 25 years.
But on the
left used to be better at pointing this out and being skeptical of the government, but now it's the right.
Which is the most aggressive, offensive attack on the U.S. Capitol and on democracy itself that we have seen in our lifetime and in many, many lifetimes.
The Weather Underground bombed the United States Capitol.
To say without evidence that it was an inside job.
I'm not saying it without evidence. I think that what we're seeing now is the video footage that's come out. I was in a different place before a lot of that evidence came out, but you have to respond to the evidence. What is your response, or what is anybody else on CNN's response to the video footage that was released of Capitol Police literally just peacefully allowing people into the Capitol?
We're not allowed to talk about that. That's my response.
We're shooting into peaceful crowds.
850 people have been convicted of crimes.
But the reality,
in D.C. kangaroo court,
is many of them were convicted before that information was released.
And do you think that former President Trump has anything to do with this?
No, because you're bringing up a really good point, and your audience and everybody deserves to know the truth about this. Normally, there's a rule in constitutional law. It's called the Brady Rule. You have to turn over exculpatory evidence.
I mean, it's a dunk fest. It's like the NBA All-Star Dunk Fest. He's just he's doing windmills on this chick, and she has no idea what to do with it. And so he's up there saying, this is evidence that should have been in the hands of these defendants. They should have had the right to have this video footage of cops welcoming people into the building. They should have had that, and they didn't. So here you have Vivek just laying out point after point after point that the CNN audience has not heard. So you're hearing all of this. You're going, yeah, of course, Vince, I know all this. This is like, we've heard all this. We know this. That's because the average conservative media consumer knows more about what's happening in their country than anyone on the American left. They're being fed unhealthy doses of propaganda on a daily basis that omit facts and evidence. And this has always been the problem with trying to subvert these news networks. In the end, if you're actually covering news, then facts are going to be very inconvenient to your operation. If you're a left-wing propaganda outfit, if that's your goal. Because Vivek just introduced a bunch. And now CNN scrambling to deal with it. But don't you think that Trump is the bad guy? You're not listening. You're not listening. Let's go to the phones. John calling in from Fairfax, line 6. John, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how are you? Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to comment on Vivek. I mean, he's amazing. He really is. I mean, I don't think he's going to win, but I think when Donald Trump wins a second term, he's got to bring this guy on because he is just like a ball of energy, and he is going to be so awesome for our country. And I do think that he's got a great future. So maybe a DeSantis, Ramaswamy take it down the road, but I think he's fantastic. I really love him. And, every time he's on with CNN, I just sit back, grab the popcorn, and just enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, he outmaneuvers them, doesn't he? And so the key with him is, I definitely think that he needs to be a part of our country in a very public and aggressive way going forward, whatever that is, if it's media, anything, because what we need is more clear thinkers who are communicating in strong terms about where we are as a country and where we need to go next. He's doing that, and I agree with you. He's not going to win this thing, but it's just a big win for the people to have somebody up there who's saying the right stuff. John, thank you. It's a good point. Coming up, I've got a lot more for you. More of your calls ahead. We'll talk about that. Also, Eric Swalwell wants people to know that he has had sex before. I don't know. It's a strange thing. I don't know why he's telling everyone, but he was bragging in a congressional hearing about it yesterday. More on that ahead. Hey, good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up, Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch joins us at 5 o'clock. Congressman Pat Fallon joins us at 5:30, and you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Let's take one more call here. We got Mike in Gainesville calling, line 4. Mike, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon, Vince. Good to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you, sir. What's on your mind?
Yeah, if you're one of the 300,000 Americans that bothers to watch CNN at 11 o'clock at night, I think you would be saying out loud, there's zero evidence that Vivek Ramaswamy dunked on Dana Bash last night. That's the talking point, that somehow he didn't win the argument hands down with Dana over things like January 6th.
Uh-huh. So you're saying the CNN viewer is so credulous that they'll never in a million years realize that there may be something else out there. They're trapped in the cave.
Yes, the zero evidence mantra that they love to throw out there when you're bringing more and more evidence every day about election stealing and January 6th. It's just how they retreat into this corner where they say, I'm not going to listen to what you're saying. Yeah. And it's literally brainwash.
Yeah, it is an upsetting commentary on sort of the state of the country right now, that you could introduce a million facts and not break through it all for so many people. It's disappointing. I mean, this is why, Biden says this week, Mike, that I never once interacted with any of the families' paymasters, and nobody calls. I mean, the media is not going crazy over this. It's not a bunch of like, oh, he lied or any of that. It's straight up just like, whatever, yawn.
Yeah, the power to ignore is, like Chris Plant says, that one of their greatest powers.
He's got a lot of good sayings, that Chris. All right, hey Mike, thank you very much. I appreciate that. The good call. But it's unfortunate. Yeah, so any number of routine CNN viewers are going to be like, there's no way this Vivek guy is anything but crazy. When, of course, he's the one who's right and she's the one who's wrong. Over on CNN, actually, I do have one other thing on this point. Congressman Mike Lawler was on CNN today, and the host of the program, he looks like a young guy. I don't know his name off the top of my head. But the two of them are interfacing about the impeachment inquiry. And Lawler keeps going on and on. He's like, hey, look, there is a mountain of evidence in front of us that Joe Biden's family is corrupt. And it's a very serious issue. And Biden has lied a lot about this subject. You have to at least acknowledge that he's been lying. Listen to some of this exchange, and as this CNN host really goes out of his way to try and mitigate the idea that Biden lied at all. Listen.
Hasn't been historically over time. To your points about, I think the question that people have as you move forward on this is all of the details that you're laying out, our reporters on Capitol Hill are covering on a regular basis. None of them have tied directly to the president inside the White House. And the money that you've pointed to going to the family has not been tied directly to the president, even before the White House, except for paying a car loan and being on calls, which you can call that objectionable, but you're saying these all things directly tie to the president.
Well, with all due respect, you are minimizing what has actually come out, okay? You have multiple shell companies, over 20 shell companies, $24 million that have transferred hands, including a $40,000 quote-unquote loan repayment, yet you don't have any of the loan documents. You have over 100 suspicious activity reports that banks all across this nation and around the globe were filing. So with all due respect, to act as though there is not information that has come out that clearly contradicts what this administration and what the president has said about it is wrong.
Those are two different things, though. I'm not saying they don't contradict what the president has said. What I'm saying is what if the information has...
The issue...
Go ahead.
The issue is about investigating, okay? And if we didn't investigate any of this from the start of the year, none of this would have come out, because certainly CNN wasn't doing anything to investigate it. So with all due respect, the information that has come out this year so far in the 11 months that the investigation has been ongoing is pretty damning and contradicts everything that the president said during the 2020 presidential election.
Yeah, stuff like, my son never received any money from, what is this thing he's talking about, China? Never received any money. I don't know anything about my son's business dealings. I've never talked to my son about his business. And then this week, what does he say? He says, I've never interacted with my son's business partners, which are the people who are giving money to the Biden family. Never done that. That's a bald-faced lie. And so it's left to a Republican member of Congress, Mike Lawler, to say out loud on CNN, he's lying. You can't even cover that?
I think
he said very clearly on stage.
One thing I'll say, no, I understand what you're saying.
He said very clearly on stage that there was never any money.
No.
Well, wait a minute. He said very clearly there was never any money that transferred from China to his family. Do you, based on the evidence and the information that has already come out, including bank records, including suspicious activity reports, was the president telling the truth when he said that?
I think the answer to that is very clear, and I don't think I'm not disputing that whatsoever.
What is the answer?
It is very clear that what the president has said has been unequivocal at times in the past, and that has not borne out to be the case. What I'm saying is what some of the members of your conference...
Did you hear that? The answer to that is very clear. Let's move on. Wait a second. What is clear about it? Beyond, say out loud to your viewers what's clear about it. Biden lied, right? And he's like, well, the president has been very unequivocal in the past about things that were borne out not to be the case. What is that language? What is that, if not the lamest attempt at concealing that Biden lied? It is unbelievable. I mean, it's not that unbelievable. It's totally believable nowadays. But this is how CNN's processing all of this stuff. And so now the RNC said, you know what we should do? We should give CNN 2 new debates. 2. That was the report this morning. The next 2 debates are going to be hosted by CNN. Does this make any sense? Sam in Alexandria on line 2. Sam, does any of this make sense to you?
Honestly, at the very beginning of it, I said RNC kind of screwed up on this, but I tell you what, I'm gonna have to throttle that back, brother. I think if they are doing it correctly, which leaves a lot to be desired, this could be outstanding. And here's why I say that. What all the politicians say is, well, I won't go on CNN because they'll cut it, they'll edit, and what you see on television will not be what I said. This is the only opportunity that we have as a party to put it out there in front of a live audience, live streaming, and say, this is our message. This is where we stand. This is where the other side stands. And, oh, by the way, this is what you have been saying. But on top of that, either Vivek or the RNC, one would hope, would have all of these links to these stories to where they can say, if you don't believe me, go to my webpage to this topic and click there. Show me that it doesn't show people being allowed into the Capitol building. Show me it doesn't show flashbangs and rubber bullets. Show me it doesn't show Biden taking payoffs and all of these reports from these banks. That's how, you're going to have the hardcore people that will not listen, but you're going to have people watching and say, that's interesting. CNN has never reported any of this, and that's what we want to do. That's the target audience right there.
Yeah, over time I've gone back and forth on a lot of this, and I'll admit my schizophrenia on this particular point, because my view is typically, why do we keep rewarding all of these people who are out to destroy you? And then simultaneously, one thing I do like, and I go back to Trump's candidacy from 2016 especially, that he would sit down with adversarial media, and it was some of the best stuff from his campaign. It was just hilarious to watch him sit down with an MSNBC person who didn't know what to do with him. He was just like filleting them on television. And so there is some value there. We'll see. We'll see what it ends up being. You may be right, Sam. In the end, this may be a positive move for any one of these guys. And it's more so not for any one of the candidates, because I don't think any of them is going to prevail on the basis of how they do in a CNN debate. That's not how they win this. In fact, they're not destined to win it at all. And Donald Trump is, who's right now being tied up in a courtroom because the left is trying to destroy his candidacy. But it will provide some entertaining television, and it'll force CNN to have to confront some very real things that almost never appear on their air. So you're right about that.
And they will have to address why this is the first time some of their audience is hearing some of these items.
Yeah.
Just like Vivek and Dana Bash.
Yeah.
Like you said, you curled up into a little ball.
I know.
And all of them saying, what the F did we just do?
My favorite thing, one of my favorite things about like CNN and MSNBC having to grapple with these things is right after the debate, for instance, they'll have like Anderson Cooper will be sitting there, and he'll have to give his audience like a primer on what exactly they're talking about, because it never is on CNN. Like a lot of these issues never appear before their audience. So you'll have the host explain, okay, I'm going to walk you through what this story is about. You've never heard of it before because we've never told you. It's a hilarious thing. It'll happen again probably on these ones. So I'll keep my eyes open for it.
And I want them to feel that level of discomfort when all of a sudden you have 3 Republicans, 1 rhino, that are up there talking about issues they've never heard the counterpoint and sit back. Because I was a Dem before, in '94, and then I started seeing the contract with America, and I'm like, hold on, I agree with all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's where Sam turned the corner, because it was out there. I saw it, as opposed to, lockstep Democrat Party. Yes, they're for me. They're for the little guy, please.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Sam, thanks as always for your calls. I appreciate that.
Thank you, brother.
Let me play some audio from Trump today. Trump was in New York facing off against Letitia James yet again in this ridiculous trial where the state of New York, with Letitia James in charge, the attorney general there, alleges that Donald Trump defrauded the banks. Now, for the 10,000th time, the banks don't say that. There's not a single bank that says they were defrauded by Trump. This is just made up by Letitia James. None of the banks say this. The banks were very happy with Trump as a customer and will continue to do business with him because he paid off his debts. He took a loan and then he paid his debts off. So how can you say he was defrauding the banks? Well, Letitia James is trying to make that case because she wants to hurt him. She ran for office on that. She said, I will get Trump. For what? Doesn't matter. We'll get him. Here's Trump today at the courthouse.
This is weaponization of justice. This is something that nobody's ever seen to this extent. It's called election interference. It's a sad day for our country that a thing like this can take place. I'm sitting in a courthouse instead of being in Iowa, where I should be, even though I'm leading by about 40 points. Thank you very much.
I'm leading by 40 points. I should be in Iowa right now, where he is leading right now. Despite his relatively light touch campaign in the state. And he said, instead I'm being tied up here. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to not recognize all of the active election meddling going on right now? right? How misled do you have to be? So Trump pointing it out yet again today. Let's see here. Let's take a phone call. I've got David in Fairfax calling in now on line 1. David, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Thank you, David.
Good afternoon, Vince. Thank you. Speaking of primers or primers.
Primer, that's right. That's the phrase. I always see primer when I read it, but it is primer.
It's spelled the same. Criminal Justice 101 taught us that, you don't incite a riot, and the rioters are not held as accountable as the people that incite the riot. And people do things that they normally would not do when they join a protest once things go haywire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who caused things to go haywire? The United States government, it appears, and Vivek was correct. The video is showing now that, these were mostly peaceful protesters other than the agents, and that was their job. This was very simple for them, and they had plenty of lead time to organize this, and they pulled it off, and here we are.
David, by any chance, do you have law enforcement experience?
No, sir.
Oh, okay.
Just studying.
Yeah. No, you mentioned Criminal Justice 101. I was curious if that came up in your career at all. But
I've been to school. I've got degrees and all that.
Yeah. No, your point's very well taken. I mean, this is a reasonable point. And like I said, Julie Kelly has been really emphasizing this because she's watching all this footage, and we can all see it now, thanks to the speaker, Mike Johnson. He puts it out there. And you're like, wait a second. Why is that particular crowd being set upon with all of these flashbangs and all sorts of things, rubber bullets and whatever? And it's like, I thought the whole point was to de-escalate and to create a less chaotic situation.
No, it's just very simple for them. It's you create the riot. You incite the riot. It's in the code. It's in the criminal code, and the rioters themselves are not held to the responsibility to the people that incite the riot. And unfortunately, who incited the riot here was our own government, it appears.
Yeah, well, Nancy Pelosi didn't want the National Guard out there. She refused that. There's a whole bunch of bizarre decisions that were made leading up to the events of January 6, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Hey, David, thank you very much for the call. All right, hold tight. I've got more for you. It's 4:50 now. We got to get to Eric Swalwell bragging about the notch on his bedpost. He's very proud of that notch. Democrat Congressman Eric Swalwell from California apparently had a sexual conquest of some kind over a decade ago that he's very proud of, and he likes to remind people of it. Yesterday, there was a hearing on a bill called the Protect Liberty and End Warrantless Surveillance Act, and Eric Swalwell decided to use that occasion to tell everyone that he slept with Fang Fang. Here's what he said.
There's nobody on this committee who has been a bigger victim of the weaponization of the intelligence community than me. I have had my cell phone data subpoenaed and procured by the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. In 2012, in a district with 40% Asian Americans, an Asian volunteer helped my campaign. I was later asked by the FBI to help the FBI understand who this person was.
Yeah, so he's like, hey, Fang Fang and I were kind of a number back then. We're like, why are you talking about this right now? Why are you even bringing this up? Remember Troy Nehls, Congressman Troy Nehls, a Republican. He's brought this up before. He wanted to make sure people know. He was kind of being a bro. He like sticking up for him. Like, yeah, Eric Swalwell was with Fang Fang, or as Troy Nehls calls her, Yum Yum.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Rodriguez, I apologize that you're here for a hearing on the border. They don't want to talk about a border. Mr. Swalwell is down there. Obviously, everybody knows he's made some comments. He's got a checkered past. He's alleged relationships.
A checkered past? I would ask.
It's my time. Alleged affairs, relationships with Yum Yum.
You don't get to say that. That's not
he had
true.
alleged relationships with Yum Yum.
I asked the gentleman's words to be taken down.
You don't get to say that, pal.
I asked the gentleman's words to be taken down as casting a slur on another member.
I am here.
A checkered past is such a great turn of phrase. I should use that more.
I asked the words of the gentleman be taken down as casting a slur on another member.
Let us have some order and civility here, and we will take up the issues one by one.
Yeah, he was just looking after his buddy. He was talking about his time with Yum Yum. I mean, like Gary in Fredericksburg, line 1. Gary, I mean, this is an amazing story, and Swalwell wants to share it with everybody.
Hey, Eric, Vince, I have to correct you. You said it was a notch on his bedpost. You're giving him too much credit. I think it was a notch on his chopstick. Fang Fang. Hey, the real question is, do you think Swalwell and Fang Fang ever had a three-way with Feinstein's driver? A little Chinese rendezvous type thing?
I don't really want to think much about the Swalwell-Fang Fang relationship, and I definitely don't want to think even beyond that. So I'm going to leave that to the mystery it is. Thank you, Gary. A notch on his chopstick. He came up with that himself. We don't even need comedy writers in this show. Hey, coming up, Tom Fitton will be with us from Judicial Watch. Congressman Pat Fallon joins us as well. A lot more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.